For those who don't know, I'm in a band called The Sound of Modesty, and we just put out a new single called Safe in Your Arms. Now in that song, I'm tuned to this really stupid, ridiculous tuning that's kind of this variant of like drop E and drop D combined together. And I featured this tuning in some of my previous videos here and there, and I've gotten comments asking about how the hell I'm managing to tune to the same E on a bass, so E1, on a normal standard scale guitar. And I thought I'd take the opportunity today to kind of show you how I'm doing that. In all my previous videos where I've featured that tuning, it's always been on this guitar. This is a Schecter Hellraiser hybrid that I've modified quite a lot, so it's got my own pickups, it's got my own wiring. And one thing about these pickups as well, I've designed and voiced them specifically to work very well in these baritone drop E tuning ranges. And like I said, it's in that really wacky tuning. And part of how I'm achieving that too is with this blocked off trem that you can switch between blocked and unblocked with this bathroom door lock. If you want to know more about it, I'll put a link to the video up here. I think the cards are here. But what I want to show you guys is that you don't need this stupid heavily modified guitar in order to get to this tuning. So instead, Gear for Music has sent me this guitar. This is a Hartwood Charger. After putting out my previous video on the G4M baritone, Gear for Music really liked that video and they wanted to work with me again. So they just told me to go through their website and look through their in-house brand of guitars and just pick something that I like, which is incredibly awesome, and I'm very, very grateful for that. Going through their website, this guitar really caught my eye. Hartwood is another one of their in-house brand of guitars, and what I'm gonna do is throw this into that E1 tuning without doing any kind of permanent modifications to this guitar. And hopefully by doing that, I can demonstrate to you that you don't need a modified guitar to go into E1. All you need is the correct gauge of strings and a bit of setup, and then you can be playing in those really low tunings. Before we go into that, I kind of want to quickly go over this guitar because this is a really awesome guitar. So this guitar has a scale length of 25.5 inches, which is pretty much your bog standard Fender scale length, like your Strat scale length, Tele scale length. Most guitars in the world pretty much have this scale length. So currently it's tuned to it's tuned to drop D because I like playing in drop D, so I was noodling on this for a while in drop D. But continue with the specs, it's got this really awesome roasted maple neck. I haven't mentioned the price yet, but for 250 pounds, this is 250 pounds, you're getting a roasted maple neck with this incredible multiply binding job, which is awesome. Like, I've never seen a guitar that has this much spec for this price. And as well, it's got locking tuners, so this will help us be stable in that really low tuning. These pickups as well sound awesome. I'm really pleasantly surprised with these pickups. Yeah, they sound awesome. I'm not going to be changing anything about this in terms of the electronics, wiring, or anything like that. And as well, it's got a coil split. So, like I said, this is a lot of spec for 250 pounds. It's got 24 frets, which on this kind of looking guitar is kind of, you know, it looks like a vintagey, modern hybrid thingy, but on this kind of a vintage spec guitar, you normally would come to find you'd normally have like 22 frets, but it's nice to have the 24. And honestly, for having a standard scale 25.5 inches, it still feels kind of short. I don't know how to put it, but it feels nice and tucked in, very comfortable. It almost kind of feels a bit more like a PRS or a Gibson scale, where it's like 24.75 inches. Maybe I'm just more used to playing baritones nowadays, but yeah, I'm really loving the way this guitar feels so far. Yeah, I'm really digging the way this sounds. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put on the correct gauge of strings and give it a bit of a setup for this tuning, and I'll show you how we can tune to E on any standard scale guitar. I just kind of want to play this guitar a bit more because I'm really loving the way this feels at the moment. Yeah, that's enough noodling. Let's put it on the bench and get it ready for this stupid E tuning. Okay, so in order to get this into E1 bass territory, we're gonna need some pretty thick strings. So what we've got here is an 8-string set. This is the 10 through 74 set from Diodario, and we're only gonna be utilizing 6 of these, obviously, because there's 6 strings on this guitar. We're gonna be using the 13 through 54, and then the 74 for the E. Oh yeah, I haven't even mentioned what the tuning actually even is. So what it is E, D, A, D, G, B. So some of you might have recognized that there's a drop D in here. So the top 5 strings are a drop D, and then there's a low E. I'll delve into the story of the tuning a bit later because it's kind of interesting. But yeah, that's the tuning that we'll be putting it in. So without further ado, let's get the strings off. Can't believe this guitar has locking tuners for the price. Now, one thing I do foresee having to do is having to unwind a portion of the 74 gauge to fit through this tuner post, because I can imagine that's probably not going to fit a 74 gauge. But I'll show you how to do that. That's fairly straightforward, to be honest. It's something I have to do quite often when I'm working with Loewe with their 105 gauge strings. Oh, I'm just kind of noticing now with the strings off that these humbucker slots here aren't very well cut. The kind of routing line on that is very rough, which is a bit unfortunate. That is a bit disappointing. That's such a shame because the rest of the guitar's finished really nicely. It's just that these humbucker slots are a bit, well, not even a bit, they're quite rough around the edges. Oh, that's unfortunate. Honestly, like I said, the rest of the guitar is really nicely finished. It's just this that is quite unsightly. Yeah, that's not good. All right, cool. Let's get these strings on. That's the 74, and let's see if I need to unwind the string. Yeah, I am gonna have to unwind the string. That's fine. Yeah, because it's locking tuners, I can get away with snipping quite a large chunk of the string off and then unwinding that and still have enough to go through the tuning post. Let me show you how to do that. So usually when you snip off a string, there'll usually already be a bit of like the wind hanging off. So all you really need to do is just kind of grab the end of the string with your clipper, and then if you grab slightly, not enough to clip through it, but just with enough force to grab the winds, you should be able to pull some of the winding off. And then once more has come off, you should be able to kind of start going around like this. Get a grip on the winds with the clippers, and then slowly unwind the string. Unwind a little bit at a time and check that you haven't done too much of it, otherwise you'll have unwound portion of the string over the nuts. Chop this excess bit off. There we go. There you go, that's an E. And then the rest of the strings will just be exactly how you would on any standard guitar. Oh, I just bled all over the guitar. I must have poked myself with the string at some point just then. Oh yeah, that's where I'm bleeding. I won't show that to the camera for anyone that's squeamish, but let me quickly wash that up. Well, that's a PSA right there. Be careful when you're unwinding a string, because those winds are very sharp. Cool, so that's all strung up now. Kind of not in tune, but that's alright. What you want to do now is you'll probably want to widen your nut slots a tiny bit. You can get specialized tools which have the correct gauges of files to wind up the nut slots. They're really awesome tools, but they're very expensive. What I can recommend you to do is take the excess clippings of your string and loosen the string off, and then just use the string as pretty much as a file. You just pretty much take it and you just rub this against the nut until the nut slot is wide enough to fit your string. Now the reason you'd want to do that is so that your string action is correct, but also so that the string will resonate properly. I found that if the string is too big for the nut slot, it kind of sounds like you're palm muting all the time. Not to a huge extent, but to some extent it kind of muffles your tone out a little bit. And the next thing you'll probably want to do is check your neck relief and your action, because you never know when you're changing gauges how the overall tension will differ. I'm not going to bore you with how exactly to do that step by step. What I am doing is uploading little setup tutorials on my Mod Shop Instagram account, so make sure to follow me there and you'll see how to set up your guitar properly. But the long and short of it is you want your neck somewhat straight so that you're able to bring the action down to a nice low enough height that's comfortable for you without any buzzing. I'm going to stop yapping now and we're going to cut back to talking about this tuning, its kind of history, how I figured it out, the song I used it in, and so on. Yeah, let's cut back to that now. Now after a bit of setup and a bleeding thumb, this is now an E. Let me quickly show you what that sounds like. Cool, so that's what that sounds like. A couple of things came up during this final setup of this, which was a bit disappointing. There were a couple of frets that were high, which meant that they were buzzing. Just from looking at it, it looked like that they weren't properly seated into the guitar at all, which is a shame, because like I said, this is such a nice guitar for the price that it's a shame that the frets weren't properly seated into the guitar, leading to the buzzing. So yeah, if you come across this issue on any guitar, sometimes it is that the frets aren't properly seated, sometimes the frets are a bit high, even if they are properly seated. So if you're not comfortable trying to fix that yourself, I'd recommend taking it to a tech and just letting them know the issue, and then they'll take care of it. But I managed to take care of that, so it's all good now. But yeah, like I said before, this isn't drop E. This is a tuning that has a low E, the same as on a bass, but it is by no means drop E, because the jump from this string to this string is from an E to a D, which is like a seventh, which is a big leap. It's almost an octave. This tuning actually started life as this tuning. Now, any low fans out there, and I'm sure there's lots of you guys out there, will probably recognize this tuning as the tuning for screaming, which is A, D, A, D, G, B. So it goes like this. Yeah, so this is that tuning. And the reason I started playing this tuning is actually quite an interesting story. I talked about this story in my previous video called What Does a Guitar Tech Do? But to give you the quick version of it, on my second tour of Loathe, while they were playing Screaming, the guitar for that song started failing. The output jack started crackling up and they couldn't use it for the song. And at that time we weren't carrying backups, which is a bit of a risky thing, and we've started carrying backups since then. But what we did have was my PRS SE Custom 24 or something like that, which I don't have anymore. I've since sold. But I carried that guitar with me to do coursework because I was a master's student at that time. But basically, with no other option, we grabbed that guitar. I quickly slapped on the strings, gave it a setup for that tuning, so that they could play that guitar for Is It Really You, which is basically this tuning but down half a step.
Sounds like dog shit.
So since then, I've had that guitar in that tuning, but then I've kind of found that I don't really enjoy having this this power chord shape. You know, your root and your fifth here. But like I said before, I enjoy playing in drop D. It's kind of the tuning that I live in. So I thought, how about instead of doing it like this, I drop this down to a G, so that instead of power chord shape like this, we've got your drop tuning power chord shape like this. I've been kind of been playing in this tuning quite a lot. This guitar, my Harley Benton, is also set up in this tuning pretty much permanently now. Fast forward a couple of months, I was sent the demo for Safe in Your Arms, which was our most recent single, and in the demo it got to the section that ended up being the heavy bit, and I thought, you know what this needs? This needs a riff that is in like a baritone E. So I didn't have a baritone at that time, and instead of getting a baritone, I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna take this tuning, which has already dropped from A to G, and take this G and drop it all the way down to an E. So yeah, you can kind of tell that these gauges aren't really that stable in this tuning. These gauges are more meant for that G tuning, but then I just thought for that one song it needs to go down to this E. So this low string is a bit floppy, as you can see, but the rest of the strings are actually really nice. So like I said, this tune is kind of like a weird mix between drop D and then this low E. These top 5 strings, we've got this drop D thing going on here. So yeah, there's the drop D thing going on here, which is really nice because, like I said, I'm really familiar with drop D. And the way it kind of translates itself into the song is kind of first half of the song is this really nice, clean kind of rock ballad thingy. You wouldn't be able to tell at all that the guitar was actually tuned to this really stupid E1 tuning, because I'm just riding on the top 5 strings the whole time, playing those chord shapes that I'm really familiar with in drop D. Ah, and it sounds so nice. So yeah, it just sounds like a normal guitar tuned normally, sounding really nice, playing nice chord voicings. But then for the heavy bit, I really wanted that impact.
Right.
So we've got that low E providing that impact. The riff goes a bit like this. So it's this really cool clash between the really nice soft ambient textures with the top 5 strings playing in drop D. And then this really heavy low E string. Quickly going over the tones as well. Again, this guitar is completely stock and it's worked really well on this low tuning, so that's really cool. But what I'm using is obviously my quad cortex, which is off camera, you can't see at all. But what I'm using for the heavy tone, which is this, is a capture that I found on the NeuroCloud of the Schecter Hellwind amp, which if any of you guys are fans of Avenged Sevenfold, which I am, big fan of, hence the drop D thing, it's Sinister Gate's signature amp that's been now discontinued, which is what's awesome about the Quad Cortex and the NeuroCloud and everything, is you can get captures of amps that don't even exist anymore, you can't even buy if you wanted to. So that's what I'm modeling, no boost at all, it just didn't need it, which is kind of surprising because normally on these kind of like, you know, heavy rock metal-y thing, the usual signal chain is like a boost into an overdrive amp, but it just didn't need it at all and it sounds awesome. Yeah, it's fun going between this drop D and the E. And then for the cleans, what I'm using is, I believe it's a Morgan amp. I'm using the Captain 50 model, which I believe is some kind of Morgan amp with a boost in front of it with the Myth drive, which I believe is like a Klon type thing. So that's what this sounds like. Oh, I love that so much. It's got the perfect amount of crunch on top. And throughout the whole song, I'm just riding on the bridge pickup because I think it's got that really nice bite to it. No coil splits or anything, just a bridge humbucker sound. Going back to the point of demonstrating that you can kind of get away with playing this low of a tuning on a normal standard scale guitar. The bridges stayed the same, the pickups have stayed the same, the wiring stayed the same. The only thing that's really changed about it is the gauge of strings, and then slightly enlarging the nut slot so that the string gauges will properly fit. It just kind of shows that if you have the right gauges and then you have the right inspiration, you can kind of get away with playing in this low of a tuning, even on a standard scale guitar. But yeah, that's the tuning. If you guys are curious about the song at all, we've just put out a kind of production breakdown of the whole song on the Sound of Modesty YouTube channel. And if you guys enjoyed the song at all, there'll be a link to the song in the description. It's out on all streaming platforms. We have a music video for it, which is really, really awesome. So go check that out. And yeah, go check out this guitar as well. This guitar is awesome. The specs on it are awesome. There's just a couple faults which are a bit unfortunate. If you are into teching and that kind of stuff, then I'd highly recommend checking out this guitar, because aside from a couple minor faults here and there, this guitar is pretty awesome. But yeah, that's it from me. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye.